All right, guys, it is 1 o'clock. We are set to go. We'll probably have a couple more people as I see them continue to flow in. Want to make sure that we are recording. We are good. All right, so today's Prospect Live event, I am very excited about. Anytime we can work with European companies and present to them some U.S. opportunities, I'm always excited about. As we live and love job creation, and this is an exciting project. I've had several chances and several meetings with some of the executives here at Project Quick Charge, and we are truly excited about today's Prospect Live event. Today's goals, we're going to kind of do a quick overview and meet our GSLI team and learn a little bit about who we are. We're going to do a quick overview of the project. Then we'll get a more in-depth knowledge about the project. They've done a wonderful job today of putting together a presentation for us. And then we'll go into our Q&A, our question and answers, that we can get everybody's questions answered. Should you be here? That's always a good question. Obviously, we have a ton of community clients on here today, and we're excited about that. These are the communities that are a part of our GSLI community network. We work with very closely and partnering them with our projects and giving them an opportunity if there's a good fit. We have some trial communities. I see several of them on here today too that are kind of taking a look at the process of how we match projects with communities that are a good match. We've got some observing companies here today. I see one or two of them that we are planning future Prospect Live events so they can learn the process and understand the power of the transparency of our Prospect Live events. And then we've got some communities that are outside of the scope of the project that are just here to observe and understand kind of what's in the mind of a prospect when they're going through that site location process. And it's a tremendous opportunity to kind of see and learn what makes them tick and what they're looking for. So when you're putting together submissions for other projects that might be a better fit on how you can meet their needs. A couple housekeeping items. Everyone should already be muted. If for any reason we unmute you or you become unmuted, we'll just quickly mute you back so that we don't have any background interference. Going live, when we get to our Q&A, if you have something really pertinent in an in-depth question, you can raise your hand. There's a little button that allows you to do that, and it'll notify me, and I'll be able to open up your mic, and you can ask an in-depth question. If you see the Q&A button, those are where we will filter in all of your questions. So as we go through the presentation, it's never too early to throw in a question. We'll save those for the Q&A portion of the presentation, and we'll address those in order as they come up. And just a reminder, we are recording and transcribing. This is a highly confidential project, so there will be protection on who is allowed to view the recording and download the transcript of this, but we will provide all the necessary links to do so for the appropriate communities. Who's with us today? Obviously, myself, Eric Kleinsorge. I'm the CEO of Global Site Location Industries. I founded the company 27 years ago. Can't believe it's been that long, but have really enjoyed the whole process of really helping identify companies that are looking at creating jobs. And that's anything and everything we do is about the ultimate result of creating jobs. And we've got Ashley Kleinsorge. Ashley is my daughter. So she's probably been with us equal number of years, but she's graduated and joined our team. I'm really excited to have her as a part of our team. She's our project manager, and she is the one in the trenches. She is the one communicating, reaching out, coordinating, communicating, understanding the projects, and making sure they're a good fit for our services in terms of a project that's going to create jobs and make impact on communities. We also have been asked to keep the anonymity. I want to try to learn how to pronounce that word sometime. Of our guests, but we have the Chief Operating Officer We have the general manager and we have the operations manager with us today that'll help us learn more about Project Quick Charge. About GSLI, Global Site Location Industries, we are a site location consulting firm. Both, we're 4 companies, but beyond that, we're 4 communities. And we work with both sides in helping make sure there's a good fit, and we act as the bridge between the two. We do have an exclusive network of communities on a state-by-state basis that we work with and allow into the GSLI community network. And those members work unlimited projects. People outside of that are allowed to work the projects if they go outside of our community's network's needs. Our driving factor is always making sure that the project is a success, because we want them to come back to us again and again for future projects. The non-members, that may be on here, you are allowed to submit on one perfect project over a 12-month period. And if this is a perfect project, we'd love to receive your submission so you can get involved with us and see how we work. Over the years, we've worked with 2,125 different companies in terms of their site locations that created 53,125 jobs, over 6.3 billion of investment, and over 31 million of total square feet that we've secured over those 27 years. This is an important part. This is our project portal. We currently have 74 active projects in the portal. We have another web address, and we might pop that into the chat box if we could. It is our new portal. It's very well known to our existing members, and we haven't launched that nationally, but it is at www.new.gslipprojectportal.com. That is where everything happens. That's where the project's information's hosted. That's where submissions are made. That's where these recordings are pulled from. It's a free account to go in and peruse our projects. And once you are a part of it, the ability to take notes, make your submissions, create your pipeline, and a lot of additional tools are there for you to use. Do want you to mark your calendar. These are important to us. It's our master series on Wednesday, June 23rd at 1 p.m. We're doing an RFI 101. Had a lot of questions about what do we need? What are the 5 critical things that need to be put into submissions when making submissions to your projects? And we're going to spend some time kind of going through some best practices and help you learn what we've seen over the thousands of projects that we've worked with on what are they looking for? What makes your submission come to the top, rise to the top, and at least get a chance to get on that short list. So please mark your calendar. We'd love to have you join us. So this is kind of the fun part of our show. I'd like to bring on Ashley Klein-Sorge. Ashley, if you could kind of talk with us a little bit. Everybody always asks, how did you come across your projects? And kind of by learning how we come across projects can help you make your efforts as a community better. But kind of come on and share with us how you came in touch with the project.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for joining today. I'm super excited you guys could join. I actually came across this project through researching prospecting for expanding companies, and I came across, an ideal situation where I was able to reach out to the company. I used their LinkedIn page. I found some people that I thought would be valuable to reach out to, and I quickly and luckily got a response from their operations manager. We were able to schedule a call and really kind of set up the necessary steps in order to get us to this point. The team from Project Quick Charge has been nothing short of amazing. They've been quick, diligent to work with. So we're super excited to have them on here today. I do want to mention, though, that while I was speaking to the operations manager, she did let me know, it brought to my attention how many people reach out to these companies once news or press release or things on their LinkedIn page are ever broadcasted out to people. So timeliness really can be everything when it comes to prospecting for leads, because if you're interested in this project or this company, you can assume that hundreds of others are as well when they have a project. So getting your word in first can be extremely valuable to you and your process of finding leads. But they've been nothing short of amazing to work with, quick, diligent. So we really do appreciate Project Quick Charge and everybody involved, and for trusting us to get our communities involved, find them some good sites. And we're excited for today and for us to all kind of get to learn a little bit more about them and their needs and what they're really looking for.
Thank you. So let's dive right in. This is a quick overview of the project. The site requirements, they're looking for about 95,000 square foot of space. They would prefer to lease. Their initial, I always call this initial areas of interest, are Texas and Nevada. We'll dive into that a little deeper. The time frame, this is quick, guys. End of Q3, beginning of Q4, 2021. They would like to have things rocking and rolling. So we are really on an aggressive time frame to provide them information, help them come up with a short list, and start doing site visits. We need 4 to 5 acres. New jobs, 244, which is a very nice number. So we want to make sure if you're a community on here that your workforce can sustain and meet those workforce needs, and a capital investment of $44 million. At this point, I'm going to bring on the general manager, and if you could come on, and I will turn the presentation. This is the beautiful PowerPoint you guys put together, and let everybody sit back and learn about your project.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Ashley, and the full team at GSLI. It's been a pleasure and really great to work with you during this time to present our details, to understand how this process works, and utmost for the opportunity and platform to make this information available to the communities that are on this call. Thank you, everyone, for your time this morning or afternoon, depending on which time zone you're on. We'll try to keep presentation brief, maybe about 10-15 minutes, a little bit about who we are, what's the principal motivation and interest for expansion in the US market. And just very briefly, by way of introduction, I'm the general manager for our company here in North America. My role is to serve as the bridge between products, technology, and the strategies developed out of our headquarters, which is in Europe, and help adapt and adopt those for the North America market, as well as build our team and presence in North America. Maybe we'll jump to the next slide. Talk a little bit about our company. What we do is essentially dedicate ourselves to developing smart, intelligent EV charging solutions, primarily focused in the residential segment. However, expanding that toward public charging and DC fast charging, the type of charging you might see on roadways, urban and suburban environments, of which which at the moment are seeing incredible growth, especially throughout Europe, Asia, and now the US, behind a lot of impetus and support from US administration, as well as a transitioning consumer mindset toward EVs. So we focus on developing these electric charging systems, as well as software and platforms that accommodate that, and develop smart energy solutions to accompany those as well. Next slide. So when we're talking about why we're looking for a facility, it's a manufacturing facility that we're looking for the development, assembly, manufacture, and fulfillment / distribution of these charging equipments. So we have a relatively robust and a lot of experience developing chargers in the AC charging space, so the type of charging stations for electric vehicles that you might have in home environment. We also have product segment focused on DC chargers, so chargers using direct current for fast charging technologies, We make compact charging systems that you might find in residences or commercial settings, all the way through to ground-mounted fast charging stations that you might install in commercial settings, shopping centers, etc. And then also a broad range of public chargers, the type you might find on a pedestal, located at your typical grocery store, all the way through to, as I mentioned, kind of fast charging powerful systems. And this is the principal motivation for what we're looking for, is a facility where we can manufacture these in North America. Next slide. So apart from the motivation just for the US, this is actually on the back of an expansion, a global expansion, which we've embarked on about 6 years ago. So our company was founded in Europe, and we've spread throughout all of Europe at the very early years of our company, where we're now over, now actually that number is a few weeks old, so we're now over 600 people, of which more than half are R&D and manufacturing. We also have expanded our influence and company presence to China, where we have a joint venture and also manufacture in China for the Chinese and Asia market. So we have a local, let's call it a domestic manufacturing strategy. We've been in the US since about 2019 with a commercial team where we plan to tackle the full North America and America's market. We've now built out a commercial team of about 20 people, expanding that to perhaps 50 or so by end of year, and also targeting to bring forward a manufacturing facility in another state from where we've established our commercial office, where we will be having a much more aggressive growth plan to build our domestic manufacturing capability for North America. Next slide. So the goal here for us is to develop in-house manufacturing capacity to reach our goal of 1 million chargers by 2023. The way that we're doing this is by creating our different production facilities. So as I mentioned, in Europe, we have an existing plant that we're now growing out of to develop Europe 2, where we're putting just this year. So the timeline for that 9 million euro is just for this year to kick off a new high-tech production plant that would augment our production in Europe. In China, we have an existing plant that we're going to maintain and expand for the rapidly growing market for EVs in Asia. And in the US, we have announced our intention to search for a plant and are now actively in the process of making the search and selection by means of this presentation today, to have not only a manufacturing presence, but also to localize and I don't know the word here, make a local and domestic supply chain to support this facility as well. Goal is to have this plant operational by around mid-year next year, which is the reason for our quick turnaround time in search. Next slide. In terms of market growth, I won't spend too much time discussing this, but I think it's important for context as to why we're looking so quickly and why EV charging manufacturing may be an attractive target and also drives us to expand our capacity. Next slide here. It's just showing a little bit in terms of the global adoption of EVs and how that's projected to grow over the next few years. You can see here that there's extensive growth in the markets where we've began, which is Europe, and a lot of the Central European economies that are investing a lot in EV and e-mobility, tactics, investment, transition. Also lots of investment happening in the Chinese market and in Asia, which is why we have a presence there. But we're really committed and very excited to see that there's also very strong investment plans for US infrastructure, with the new administration pledging certain commitments for investment for specific to EV charging infrastructure. So 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. I think the horizon for that is by 2030. But also in terms of local state leadership for transitioning from combustion vehicles to EVs, and growing the market there. So we're kind of riding the tailwinds of all of this activity and seeing a lot of interest in local manufacturing tied also to that investment, which is one of the reasons we're looking for plants in the US. Next slide. So in terms of our project, yep, we can skip over to the next plant. We're on a pretty quick timeline, as mentioned. So within this month and next month, we're conducting our review of proposals for different factory facilities and touring those facilities in a first phase. We hope to make selections relatively quickly, considering we have experience already building out different facilities to be able to make a selection within the month of August. We kick off the first roles, project managers and leadership roles for the new plant in September, and also hiring early production roles and training within the next few months. And then in October, kick off the actual build out plus commissioning, which we expect to take a few months into. That takes us into June, when we expect to start production. What we're looking for is a plant that can support manufacturing, since that's going to be our principal occupation and activity within that facility. So ideally, being able to support that from the outset. In terms of impact, specific to manufacturing, about 144 jobs and 100 other jobs in leadership capacity, technical capacities, logistics, different job functions there that would support those manufacturing roles. And the horizons we're talking about are 10 years, as well as a total investment amount of capital expenditure, about 44 million, which supports the initial move-in, as well as the growth of our production facilities with 2 phases of growth. I'll get into that in the next slide, and an investment in terms of human resources payroll of about 11 million over that horizon as well. Next slide. In terms of the plant infrastructure overview, I'm sure these details will be made available, so I won't go point by point, but at a high level, we're looking at a factory with anywhere between 30 plus foot height for stacking our racks for fulfillment and finished product, as well as raw materials. About 95,000 square foot, or 95,000 plus square foot, give or take 10 to 15% on that amount, I think would enter within what we're looking for. We're looking for that to have a sizable assembly area, an incoming and outbound warehouse, and also validation facilities where we run tests, validation, and R&D related to the production of EV charging equipment. We also look for having some offices within the plant for the roles that are perhaps administrative or supporting the roles within the manufacturing lines, as well as different amenities for the workplace there, in terms of parking, estimated somewhere around 150 plus parking spaces for phase 1, all the way up to potentially 300 for phase 2. And then adequate power to assume a production facility. So we don't have special or specific needs, but something that can support high-tech manufacturing in that facility in terms of power. Next slide. So here's a first look at the first phase of our development and the ideal, let's call it, layout for how we would plan a facility of this type, with inbound, outbound, space for validation, and office facilities, with single lines for each of our different product lines, whether it be AC or DC charging. And then the next slide represents phase 2, where we would build out to greater capacity for raw materials on the inbound and outbound side, for finished product, as well as growth of the lines, essentially duplicating lines where necessary, and also adding new product lines within the factory layout. Next slide. Here, perhaps our COO can give a few words related to our manufacturing, let's call it strategy, but we are looking at high-tech manufacturing lines, and I'll let our COO speak a little bit to this.
Yeah, well, more or less, there's been our assembly lines are based, they're semi-automatic. We are saying they're semi-automatic because we have the first workstation that we are working on the assembly line. I will do it by a direct labor, okay. And what we have is, in order to know exactly what's happening in each workstation and control the what's happening in which workstation. Okay, we know exactly all the data from that. The end of line, in order to guarantee the quality of our product, okay, is done automatically. That means the machine has a artificial vision, and we control all the tests that we're doing in the end of line. This is done completely in an automatic way, okay, and also the movement between the different workstation is done automatically. That means the assembly line is a smart assembly line, okay, who know exactly which is the process that we're doing in each workstation, and we know exactly if this product is okay or not okay in order to follow for the following workstation. That means we are introducing also the digitalization and the industry 4.0 in order to have on live data in order to manage our production and to take the decision very quickly. And basically it's that. Okay, we're working, I would say, in the last technology in terms of assembly line and production tools.
Thank you. No, fantastic. And with that, acquisition and put into practice and motion on the technology side and machinery required for us to move in, we also have a strong plan for the component related to employment for the facility. So here we have a breakdown of different types of roles. On the left-hand side, the share of entry-level versus more senior positions that would occupy and work within the factory. And on the right-hand side, your general sort of family of roles. Let's call it a family of roles related to the different hiring positions that we will have for this facility. It's important to note that this is our plan for direct hire employees, but there will also be subcontracted roles, for example, for transport, logistics, facilities management, etc., maintenance for machinery potentially. So this is just our plan for direct hires for Wallbox. So there will also be some indirect hiring as well in addition to these roles. Next slide. In terms of our forecast, this is what our 10-year horizon looks like to achieve those numbers of hiring based on relatively, I would call it conservative forecast for our growth. Next slide. In terms of the payroll forecast, sort of growing in line with the hiring plan as well. So you see some symmetry in terms of the growth there. And then a next slide. To summarize in terms of investment, so the capital expenditure that we're going to be putting forward for the line build out, so all of this high-tech machinery and configuration of our line, about 13 million. Tooling, so being able to produce on-site and manufacture, about 2 million. The construction build out will happen in phases from move-in to developing new lines to achieving our phase 2 is about 22 million. And then the validation tech and lab for R&D testing and other facilities, about 5.8 million there for a total of 44 million in investment. Next slide. Oh, well, that's concluding our presentation. We're happy to jump to next steps. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Wonderful job. I really enjoy understanding the total scope of the project, and that's why I'm so excited about this project. But we have had some questions come in, and feel free, any of you that feel best to chime in on these answers. These are some preset questions that came in, and we've had some questions start to flow in on the Q&A. Now's the time to go ahead and start putting those questions. If you could, as you put your questions in, state your location also, so we can kind of get a feel from where we are speaking to. But first, I guess, what are your key motivations? Are there any motivations besides meeting the demand growth needs and things? What would you say is the biggest motivation factors of opening this facility?
Yeah, it's a question of time and place as well as company strategy. I would say first and foremost, it completes the picture in terms of our domestic manufacturing strategy for the three major continents where EV adoption is taking place. So North America is let's say the remaining third of our global expansion. However, it's also driven from our early success in the market. So we've been able to launch products in the market to a lot of success, as well as the momentums we see. And so in order to keep up with this capability and be able to supply in a more timely manner, achieve better economies of scale and lower cost of fulfillment. These are the motivations for having an expansion sooner rather than later, as well as a side benefit, potential funding coming through the pipeline with any investment for e-mobility is likely to have a built in the U.S. component, which we would be very thrilled to be able to fulfill and put into action here locally.
Okay. So if you get and looking at your slide, your building looks pretty specific in terms of the needs of the inbound, outbound, and offices and everything. Sounds like a build to suit is out of play, totally out of play because of the time frame. So in terms of finding that building, what are the must-haves in terms of the building? Is it the clear space? Is it the width of the building? What are the must-haves in the configuration?
Perhaps our COO would like to chime in a little bit on any specifics related to building. We made the layout there to support our ideal scenario where we can have an inbound side and an outbound side. So to the extent that that can be possible would help in aligning the way that we organize our current production lines in our other facilities throughout the world. The other aspect is a site that's ready to go. So either a new build that's concluding within our timeline where we can have some tenant improvements to align with that completion, or a completed building that's move-in ready. Maybe our CEO can add more detail for other facility specific details.
You're on mute. I'll ask him.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem.
I mean, what we showed on the slide was, I would say, the theoretical layout that we want. It's not a must, okay? But because we can change the layout for the semi plan, but the ideal layout that we want is we have a income area, the production area following the incoming area, and the outbound warehouse in a straight way.
Is any of your equipment to the scale where the thickness of the concrete on the floor is important? Do you have any heavy manufacturing equipment that needs?
No.
Okay.
No. Normally, that's mean the most heavy equipment that we have is in terms of weight is the warehouse. Okay, the assembly lines are not so are big, but are not. We don't require any specific utility requirement.
Okay,
no.
Awesome. Perfect. So this is just a question that we always get asked during these. In terms of surrounding states, we know you've identified Texas and Nevada's high degrees of interest. If the right incentives and the perfect building were available at a neighboring state or a nearby state, would those be open for consideration in your search?
Yes, we're definitely open to facilities and locations that can meet our principal criteria. There is a logistics aspect to our search, which is being able to serve both East and West coasts with a slight preference toward the West because our customer base would likely be a little bit larger on the West Coast for delivering our larger, heavier chargers. So there's a small logistics question there that we want to consider, but we would be open to neighboring, adjacent, or states that would meet that criteria for fulfillment to both East and West coasts with a slight preference on West.
Okay, so Larkin Simpson asked a question. He's from Central Louisiana that kind of plays in to number 4. Um, Tell us more about the customers you serve. Like, can this, in terms of location, you might have some future plans for other locations, but does a clustering, if you locate the facility near existing automotive manufacturers or people with EV battery knowledge, does that help in terms of that size of workforce you're looking for?
Sure. I think from that perspective, we're a little removed from the specific automotive supply chain side, but we do have our own supply chain that where co-locating or locating nearby would be advantageous. So related to, circuits, cables, raw material for the development of our equipment. We have some electronics components that we would source also local, where being adjacent would be advantageous. So that's definitely something that we would look favorably upon. And I think the other aspect is, while we do not require highly specialized roles, being able to have some kind of a manufacturing let's say, workforce readily available, as that's the largest activity that we'll be performing in this facility, I think would be the next kind of benefit as well, to be able to have qualified workforce for those roles, which would be critical to this plant.
Okay, perfect. And this is kind of over the past couple, you haven't mentioned that as much today as in our discussions over the last couple of weeks. You mentioned close proximity to international airport. Could you just explain why that's of importance to you guys?
Yep. The close proximity to international airports is really for the benefit of having oversight and connectivity of our plant within our global network of plants. So we have all of our leadership out of our headquarters in Europe that's heavily involved with plants not only within and throughout Europe, but also Asia, and plan to be involved in North America as well. So being able to have that connectivity is key. And also from a domestic standpoint, we have a multi-state strategy in terms of having a commercial headquarters in one location and factory in another. So being able to connect those two with adequate facilities for transport and access to that plant is important. It would not be the principal criteria. However, for us, being our first plant in the North America continent, connectivity is important from that perspective.
Okay. I think you've done a wonderful job in your presentation on answering number 6 and 7. But in terms of number 6, I'd like to expand a little on that. In other companies we work with, there's a variety of costs that go into your manufacturing. It can be labor, it can be logistics, it can be raw materials, and some of those are tipping points. Some are more important than others. Would you say one of those, what's the most important factor in terms of your production of keeping your costs down? So what would you be looking for as a must-have to say, hey, we've got to keep our costs down in this manufacturing facility, and this is the most expensive part of the process?
I'll allow our CEO to chime in, as we have some experience with this, and I'll elaborate if anything's missing.
What is more important for us is the supply chain. Okay, the supply chain has been our suppliers is which cause our main driver cost. Okay, that's when it's important to be close to these suppliers. Okay, and also to have a very close, I would say, close in terms of supply chain, in terms of distance between our factory and the factory from our suppliers, and also to have, I would say, the quantity of the suppliers that we need for the same technology. Okay.
Perfect.
This is what important more than, and the second driver will be the logistics, of course. The labor cost in our product is not, I would say, not so important. Okay, compared with the two previous drivers. Perfect.
So in terms of an educated workforce, seems like you have a variety of labor, a nice number of people that you got employed, but a very short time frame. we be in terms of the labor, how highly skilled will a majority of those be? It seemed like in terms of the manufacturing, because that was your largest number. Is that a skilled manufacturer or assembly person that's on since they're working with that equipment, or can they be trained?
They need to have. That's mean we have some state of approach in terms of we say talking speaking about the industrial side. I mean we know we want to be placed in I would say in industrial area because we have some knowledge that we need from our worker. I would say the indirect workers. Okay, the ones that we working with the process, with logistics, and with of course in terms of purchasing and supply chain. For the direct labor, of course, they're going to be training. Okay, nobody knows everything from the beginning. That means we have a training plan for all the employees, and this is not, I would say, not a big requirement for the direct labor.
Okay, and kind of feed off of that question because of the number of employees. Would you, some of our communities, I know they'll host job fairs and sponsor some of those job fairs to help you with such a short time frame of employing those people. Will this all be internally handled, or would you be open to assistance from a community with a job fair to help you locate employees?
I think we certainly would be open to additional support. There will be waves of expansion. So especially as we transition from one assembly line to two assembly lines, getting that initial grouping of specialized and non-specialized roles together. Yes, I think we would benefit largely from local support and local know-how to get the right roles in place. So I think, yes, we would be open to leveraging external support and local support, in fact. Yeah.
Okay. Talk about any kind of importance of rail or port access. Do you have a need for those? For example, if you're exporting or importing products?
No, because that's been the conception of the U.S. assembly plant is for producing all our product for the U.S. market. That's mean
Okay.
the port is not important for us, and also our supply chain will be. What we want is to be close to the assembly plant. That's mean the import from other countries is not, or in theory, it's not. I would say important for us.
Okay, perfect. Last question that's been posted is tipping points. I always like to ask that if you have 4 or 5 communities and you're looking at all their submissions, the building's somewhat aligned and everything, is there a tipping point that would make you choose one side over the other, whether or not that's geographic, whether or not that's logistics, whether or not that's workforce? What's your main tipping point that would set a community apart?
I can volunteer and answer here. I think that we'll give a fair assessment to all the proposals. We've made a geographic area somewhat clear in terms of the scope where we're looking, but we're certainly open to looking at different proposals. As our COO mentioned, there's some just unavoidable costs that we want to keep low, which is largely on supply chain logistics. We are going to be expanding to heavy charging equipment, which is one of the principal motivations for placing our plant in a place that's strategically located for both the fulfillment and receipt of those materials. So I would say that those would probably be the considerations that might take an outsize, let's say, influence on the decision, but we certainly would categorically exclude for just that reason, because the perfect facility may be a strong motivator, a great workforce plan to support the employment of these folks can be a great motivator. But I would say that largely the first kind of two that I mentioned, supply chain and logistics, on a maybe impact level, are bigger considerations for us.
Okay, great. All right, we're going to go into the Q&A. I've got some questions here from communities. And again, just as you feel necessary in terms of answering. The first one's from Larkin Simpson, again, from Central Louisiana. Central Louisiana is just outside the border of Texas, heading east. And so he's asking, have you identified, or what are your logistic needs? Are they east-west interstate? Asked again about rail, but I think you've answered that. But which way have you identified which way your product flow will go in the U.S.?
It would be going in both directions, both east and west, but primarily by ground shipping. So truck transport, not as much any other means, rail or air. Certainly are not considered, at least for our heavier equipment. It might be for our smaller equipment. We fulfill to all 50 states, especially with our residential charging product. So that's obviously important. But I would say it would be in both directions with, as I mentioned, a slightly larger population of customers on the West Coast.
Okay. I've got a question coming in from Troy from Kuna, Idaho. What are your, they're a rapidly growing city in Boise, in the metro area of Boise. How flexible is your timeline? Are you strictly adhering to that deadline, or those goals that have to be met?
Yeah, so the timeline is based on a work back plan from our desired production start date, which is June 2022. So to the extent that the production goals can still be met, there may be some flexibility. However, we have a strong target to secure a facility, announce a facility, move into a facility this year. So we are trying to keep to our timeline.
Okay, I've got a question here from Rick Clifton from Alabama. And I think you answered this, but you're open to, would you consider locating in other areas if the right match came up, building needs and everything?
Yeah, we'll give fair assessment to the different proposals, as well as maybe uncovering questions we may not have asked, or learning new facts about different regions that did not pass our first layer analysis. We've established our priority locations, or let's say preliminary target areas for South and Southwest on the basis of logistics and supply chain. However, we're happy to learn more about different regions.
Yeah, and Rick's a good client of ours down in Covington County, Alabama. What is also asking, could you remind him of the ceiling height requirement on the building?
Yes, it says 33 foot, but we've seen 30 foot can qualify. So between 30 plus feet. I think as low as 28 should also meet the requirements.
Okay, I got a question in from Stephen Valdez. Just asking, is close proximity to Mexico any value?
Not specifically, but it may be valued if there's maybe some supply chain may come in from Mexico, but I don't think specifically. Maybe our CEO can add more to that, but I don't.
No, basically it's what you say, Douglas. The only point that can be interesting is for the supply chain, but it's not also I would say a bigger requirement that we have.
Yeah, and to be clear, it would not be the majority of our supply chain.
Exactly.
Perfect. Got one coming in from Amanda. She's a part of our team. She's asking on behalf of a client. She was asking about multi-tenant because of the 95,000 square foot requirement. Would you be open to a larger building that met your requirements if you cohabitated the space, or able to take advantage of a space that way? Or do you want a standalone?
Yes, standalone has been our preferred method. We would be open to co-location, assuming that one, it's compatible industry where we're not impacted by the co-tenant, and two, which is important, that the parking requirements would be able to be met for our phase 1 and phase 2. So I would say yes with those conditions, with a preference for standalone if possible, but we can be open to co-tenancy.
Okay. Got a great question coming in from Sheldon. Sheldon's from northeastern Nevada. I've had the opportunity to ride about 1,500 miles in a vehicle with Sheldon over a 3-day period. So I've seen the tremendous opportunities up there that they have to offer. But how much traffic do you anticipate in terms of truckloads in and out of the facility on a daily basis?
Difficult to answer that. Difficult to answer that because it depending on the supply chain and also the transport to our customers. But in an easy way, in the first step, in the phase one, easy. We're talking about between 10 and 20 trailers.
Okay. On that question, I'd like to expand a little. Will you be hiring the use of a third-party logistics trucks, or will you have your own trucks?
No. That means we are managing everything with a third party.
Okay. All right. We've got a question from Matt Davis, Northwest Ohio, in the Toledo, Detroit area. Would there, if not in this one, this is again another question in terms of that location. In terms of this location or future locations, do you think you would ever go that far north?
Possible. For this phase, the logistics question may be more challenging the farther north we go for year-round fulfillment. Of course, environmental factors surprise you sometimes, but we are looking for kind of year-round fulfillment and also proximity to our clients and supply chain. However, we can consider on the basis of understanding what kind of logistics benefits there may be from strategic hubs in north central U.S. let's say.
Okay, great. That's our last question. If you have any other questions, please pop them in and we'll get them answered. But I want to thank you guys for the wonderful job you've done on your presentation. This is the nuts and bolts of it, submissions for Project Quick Charge. We're going to post a poll right now. If you'll put up the poll, basically just pop in here whether or not you anticipate submitting on the project with a submission. That'll give us your email address and put us to the top of your attention so that we know that you'll be submitting one. Submissions are due by June 29th at 5 p.m. We're probably going to set that as a pretty hard first round submission so that we can properly put those together for their evaluation. Once those submissions come in, just so you know, our team members, our community assessment directors will vet those. They'll make sure that they're put together properly and organized for Project Quick Charge. And then we'll give them an opportunity to look at those and we'll communicate with them and find out which communities have so-called made a short list of interest. And then we can go into scheduling some site visits, some Zoom meetings or whatever's necessary to properly consider the area. The recordings, as I said, they are going to be protected. So you will need to send an email to brooke.edwards@gslisolutions.com if you'd like one of those, and she will provide you the necessary links for review. And just make sure you whitelist or add the email, our email, to your safe sender list. When there's attachments and things, sometimes those go into a junk folder. And I'm glad there's about 71% of the people here today plan on putting in a submission. So it looks like we'll get a lot of good project submissions. Got a couple questions that did come in. If we can kind of circle back and answer them. Mary Lilly from Greenfield, North Carolina. She's asking about utilities on the electricity. Is there, I know you didn't, is that any anticipated loads? Is it a 24/7 requirement or just pretty much if it meets a high-tech manufacturing requirement, it's going to be good.
Yep, it's the latter. So as long as production, a standard kind of high-tech production facility can run, it should be no problem in terms of utility costs. It's a factor we will let's say weigh, but not a large or meaningful part of our ongoing operations. If our CEO has any comments, if not, then I say we're pretty flexible on that aspect.
Yeah, Mary, if you could raise your hand, I'll try to bring you on live. That last question's kind of, I don't understand that question in terms of the thing, but I'd love to bring you online. If you could raise your hand, I could bring you on live. Well, if not, I'll just go ahead and ask the question. Is the company eligible for any of the Volkswagen settlement monies?
Eric?
Yes, there we go. Hi, Mary.
Yes, good afternoon. The Volkswagen settlement monies are is the national settlement that Volkswagen Corporation made to go towards electrical or EV. So you have to be a certified provider, and they are using this money to provide charging stations and everything across the United States. It's actually kind of a trust situation. Each state gets a certain amount of money. So I was just asking if they know about the program and if they are interested in it, or eligible for it, or have they even looked into it?
So it sounds like there's been a settlement on Volkswagen's behalf to help a company like yours establish a presence and help with operations with funds. Do you know about that, or if somebody has knowledge, could we hook you up and let Mary and some other communities, if they apply, to help you with that?
Sure, I think it's something we're open to. We have not looked into it specifically, but if it's something that's available, as an EV charging manufacturer, would be certainly interesting. And I would imagine our activity would fall under EV charging dissemination. So, but yeah, we'd have to look into that a bit farther. We have not come across that yet. I have heard of the settlement, but not on funds to support, manufacturing or establishment. But this would be very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. So again, these are no other questions. We've got those all answered. This is our submission process. You will need to go to the portal at www.new.gslipprojectportal.com. Log in. It's a free account to log in. You'll be able to view the project and put your submission in via the portal. Couple contacts as we wind up. Ashley Kleinswords, again, if you have any questions, you can direct them to her. She's our project manager at ashley@gslisolutions.com, 469-778-2606, and she's extension 6. And two of our wonderful community assessment directors that receive these submissions and help review and help them get organized on behalf of the community to the project are Amanda Tompkins. Her email is amanda@gslisolutions.com. Phone number, same one, 469-778-2606, extension 4. And Carol Harris, Community Assessment Director, carol@gslisolutions.com. And you can call 469-778-2606 and we'll forward you to Carol. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for joining. We here at GSLI want to thank the team here at Project Quick Charge for the amount of time and openness they've had with their project. We are excited. I know it's a big, exciting project for them with this U.S. presence, and would really like to thank the communities, every one of you that have tuned in today. I know how busy you are helping build your own cities. And hopefully this project here may land in your city someday. So thank you for joining. Until our next GSLI Project Live, I'm signing off. Goodbye.